Welcome back to Mohammed's Criminal Enterprise, Part 16C, as we continue from our Rainbow Room as part of the YAHOWAH blog. I am your host, Craig Winn. In our last partial episode, I terminated the program, and these are all live streams, so there is no rebooting, if you will. There is no piecing it together in post-production. What you see and hear is all coming to you live. And to do so, one of the things that I want to be very careful of, if I'm reading from a passage that is in the Islamic Quran or the Hadith collections, or if we're doing another show and I'm citing from Yahweh's Torah, Prophets, and Psalms, or we're also doing programs where we repudiate what is found in the Christian New Testament, and I cite Paul or Peter or Luke or Mark et al. And comment on what they have to say. Well, my commentary is largely impromptu, extemporaneous with the material, because I know this material probably better than anyone on earth as it pertains to what makes Islam wrong, what makes Christianity fraudulent, and most importantly, what is there for us to know about who Yahweh actually is, what he's offering, and what he is expecting from us in return. So most of what I will share with you is very much like what I'm discussing right now. It comes extemporaneously as I share openly with you. But when it comes to the scriptures themselves, and I wouldn't use the term scriptures when pertaining to Yahweh, it's his testimony. Scriptures is a Latin word. It means just writing, but it's applied to religious texts. Yahweh is anti-religious. So the religious texts of the Christian New Testament, the Talmud, or the Quran and Hadith would apply in this case. And I never want to ad-lib them. I don't want to paraphrase them. I want to be as absolutely accurate as is possible. And the only way to do that is to make certain that I have a copy of that text for me to read. And there's a wonderful device that has been made that enables such a thing. It's called a teleprompter. Now you see presidents and others using them. And I have 3 here in our various studios here in the U.S. Virgin Islands that I have set up for the express purpose of broadcasting live these YAHOWAH blogs. And occasionally, because teleprompters do not like to be used as I am using them, where I take entire volumes that I have written, and I've written 36 books. They average about 750 pages a piece, so it's a lot of material. And I take the entire books that are filled with these translations and all of the relevant documentation and even some of the insights and commentary that can be gleaned from them, and I put them all into the teleprompter and then can read the passages accurately. And teleprompters don't much like working off of PCs, and I use here very large tablets to present this, because it's only with the tablet that I can maintain formatting, and formatting is very important when reading a translation, particularly if it is one that I have written based upon, well, in the Quran, in the case, I use interlinears to be as precisely accurate as is possible. But I also cite some 66 other English translations. But when I'm doing my presentation of Yahweh's testimony, all of those translations are my own. And I've spent enormous numbers of hours making them as complete and accurate as possible. And so it's much easier to present on a laptop, and there's none of these teleprompters that, much like laptops, they prefer you to run things on puny little tablets. And that just does not work for my formatting. And therefore, on occasion, we will have to stop a program and say, we need to regroup and get the equipment to cooperate now. In this particular instance, this is an exceedingly important program because it is the conclusion of Mohammed's criminal enterprise. And we've had a couple of glitches, and I have to now come back and conclude them. And one of the things we could have done is simply to delete what we had done previously in part A and part B of this 16th episode of Mohammed's Criminal Enterprise. But that's not our style. I want you to see this raw and unfiltered. It's important that you know that I know what I'm talking about and that I can make this relevant for you, because literally the survival of the state of Israel, the survival of Jews, and then beyond them, the very survival of all humanity is predicated on you knowing what I am sharing and being able to respond to it intelligently. So with that much at stake, I don't ever want to erase anything. And so here we are with a fresh beginning of Mohammed's Criminal Enterprise, the story of first blood and Islam, and the Quran celebration of the abduction, death, and booty that was derived from the exchange between the first Muslim militants and the merchants of Kaabaville, the very people who had built the Kaaba, had developed the religion of Islam, including the prostration prayer, the zakat tax, the circumambulation, the veneration of gods and goddesses there, the Hajj, really everything that's important in Islam, even Ramadan, which was recently celebrated, all of it was conceived and nurtured by the Quraysh, who were the victims of this raid. And that in itself is important for you to understand, because since the Quraysh became the first bloodbath in Islam, and these people were Muhammad's extended family and neighbors around the Kaaba, the very custodians of the Kaaba, the ones who actually came up with the idea of calling it a mosque, where the prostration prayer would take place. Every aspect of Islam was conceived by the very people that Muhammad was now killing. And the reason that's important is that by killing them, Muhammad could claim their religion for himself, and that is the religion of Islam, the very religion that those Muhammad was killing had conceived and were nurturing. And it's very similar to what happened later as we go further into the surahs that were revealed in Yathrib, today's Medina, during the first 10 years of the Islamic era, following the Pledge of Aqaba, which was a promise to wage war against all mankind. What we find is that Muhammad really had nothing to talk about except his exploits in pedophilia, his involvement in incest, his megalomania, his terrorist raids in this case, abductions and enslaving people, robbing them, and his commitment to terrorism and war was really all that he had to talk about. And he ran out of any material that would create any sense of religiosity for the Quran. And he wasn't all that bright, and Allah wasn't much of a help. So to fill the Quran with some sense of religiosity, Muhammad started buying Talmud readings, the Babylonian Talmud, which was written about 150 years previously. He started buying these Talmud recitals from rabbis in Yathrib. And the Jews in Yathrib, when Muhammad migrated there after being laughed out of Kaabaville in shame, were some 30,000 people strong. They made up 3/4 of the population of Yathrib. By the time Muhammad was done, there would be none of them except some sex slaves, because the children had been sold into slavery and the men had been murdered by the Muslims. So when Muhammad bought all of these Talmud readings, which is the sum total of every reference to Adam, to Eden, to Noah, to Moses, to Aaron, all of it, the references to David, to Solomon, every bit of it, the creation accounts, you name it, they all were purchased by Muhammad from the rabbis, something that the Quran acknowledges and the hadith confirm. And then when these rabbis that sold Muhammad these stories mocked him because he not only attributed the stories they had sold him and recited to him to his wannabe god Allah when they came from the Talmud, and then he twisted them to suit his specific agenda, making the stories themselves ludicrous, they laughed at him. And when you mock a psychopath, well, bad things happen. And so this psychopath turned his newly minted militants on the Jews. And the reason they also were killed is they were the source of the religiosity of Islam and the Quran. Everything that Muhammad didn't steal from his own extended family amongst the Quraysh that established the mosque and the Kaaba and prostration prayer, the Salat tax, the holy month of Ramadan, the fasting, you name it, he stole from Jewish rabbis. And to hide the evidence, he murdered them both. So that is the story to which we are reviewing. Quran 8:60. Now I'm going to read this as if Allah was completely literate, and I'm going to add the prepositions and articles and verbs so that it makes sense to you. And then I'm going to share many other translations so that you know how others have treated this text. It is astonishing. Quran 8:60. Make ready against them. That would be all non-Muslims. That would even be the first Muslims, in the sense that the ones that they were attacking were the first Muslims. They actually created the religion of Islam that Muhammad stole. Make ready against them whatever force and firepower you can muster. Every obtainable transport of military equipment you can mobilize, including war mounts, to threaten and terrify the enemy of Allah and your enemy, and others besides whom you may not even know, whom Allah does know. And whatever you spend in the cause of Allah shall be fully repaid to you, and you shall not be treated unjustly. End quote. If this were the only call to war in the Quran, you would have to say that the Quran was a declaration of war on all humankind, and that there would be no restraint in the fighting or in the imposition of terror, and that Muslims were being bribed to spend both their lives and their money in pursuit of world domination. And of course, they did so. The first 100 years of the imposition of Islam, 200 million people were murdered, enslaved, raped, and plundered, where 1/3 of the Earth's population was decimated. 200 million people. This is what they did. And so it's not just this is what the Quran says, this is what they did. I'm going to read this to you again, and then we'll continue on. Make ready against them. This would be all non-Muslims. We've proven that from the text itself. Make ready against them whatever force and firepower you can muster. Every obtainable transport of military equipment you can mobilize, including war mounts, to threaten and terrify. To threaten and terrify the enemy of, says Allah, we'll call him Allah, and your enemy, and others besides whom you don't know, but whom Allahu, we'll call him Allah, does know. And whatever you spend in the cause of Allah, we'll call him Allah, shall be fully repaid to you, and you shall not be treated unjustly. Well, of course, this is a call for all good Muslims to amass their weapons of mass destruction. The noble Quran, which is far and away the world's most popular translation, and which strives to convey Allah's intent as accurately and literally as possible, even adds tanks, planes, missiles, and artillery to the text. The ungod of Islam is ordering Muslims to terrorize his enemies. Now, I didn't know that God had enemies, but this one is an ungod, so I guess it's appropriate for ungods to have enemies. I would suppose that as an ungod, that his primary enemy would, of course, be Yahweh. And second on to Yahweh would be Yahweh's prophets, which are Jews. So the ungod of Islam is ordering Muslims to terrorize his enemies, their enemies, and the enemies that are yet unknown, waging war on humankind until no one is left to fight. Well, this is as purposeful as a Panzer tank, as unyielding as a kamikaze, as devastating as a nuclear bomb. It explains why so many Muslims are terrorists, and it foretells our future. If we as humans fail to contain and quarantine this plague, which is incurable, if we fail to annihilate it before it annihilates us, well, all life and liberty will be extinguished on this planet. There's a lot writing on this. And therefore, it is shocking that I'm the only one here in social media, online, who is telling you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about this religion. No one else has written 5 volumes, 4,200 pages, documenting everything that can be known about Allah, Mohammad, the Quran, the Hadith, the formation of Islam. No one else. Offering them freely online, goddamnreligion.org, yadayah.com, either one. Every word in their entirety. You can also go to Amazon. They're available for purchase if you prefer hardback and paperback. And of course, this is now the 16th episode of just Muhammad's Criminal Enterprise. And prior to that, I did Islam's Holocaust and even series beyond that. So I've provided 40 or 50 hours worth of video blogs on this subject, as well as the 5 books that I have written called Goddamn Religion. I know this material better than anyone alive. I have proven every point that I make. This is a matter of life or death. So I want you to have the benefit of every other translation so that you have no doubt whatsoever that the Quran is a call to arms and to kill, to terrorize, to threaten all who are not Muslims. Muhammad Assad wrote, "Hence, make ready against them whatever force and war mounts you are able to muster, so that you might deter thereby the enemies of God, who are your enemies as well, and others besides them of whom you may be unaware, but of whom God is aware, and whatever you may expend in God's cause shall be repaid to you in full, and you will not be wronged." End quote. Now, in this case, there was the Arabic word ilah for God was never written. And yet in this translation, we read the title God, 3 different times. In the text of the Quran itself, in the Arabic, it says ilaha, ilahu, and ilahi. It means the for him, the to him, and the for her. It is replaced in most translations by Allah. Replacing it by Allah is a stretch because that's not what it was written, but to replace it with God is deplorable. It's indefensible. It's scholastically unjustifiable. The clear Quran wrote, "Prepare against them what you believers can of military power and cavalry to deter Allah's enemies and your enemies, as well as other enemies unknown to you but known to Allah. Whatever you spend in the cause of Allah will be paid to you in full, and you will not be wronged. So when we are told that you must fight in Allah's cause throughout the Quran, when we are told that jihad is fighting in Allah's cause in the Quran, how would you define Allah's cause in the context of this statement, which just said that you must muster every military armament at your disposal to threaten and terrorize Allah's enemies, your enemies, and enemies still yet unknown to you? Has Allah not defined what is his cause? To fight, to threaten, to terrorize non-Muslims is the cause of Allah, as defined by Allah in his Quran. Safi Kas wrote, "Prepare whatever forces you can so that you might frighten God's enemies and yours, and to frighten others unknown to you, but known to God. Whatever you may do in God's cause will be repaid to you in full, and you will not be wronged." End quote. Well, again, he substituted Allahi, Allaha, Allahu for God, even though the Arabic word for God was not written in the text. And he turned threaten and terrorize to frighten. Yusuf Ali. Against them make ready your strength to your utmost of your power, including the steeds of war, to strike terror into the enemies of Allah, and to your enemies, and to others besides, whom you may not know, but whom Allah doth know. Whatever ye shall spend in the cause of Allah shall be repaid to ye, and ye shall not be treated unjustly. I guess if they put it in Elizabethan English, it will sound like, well, it must be the equivalent to the Bible. But I don't recall reading something like this in the voice of Yahowah. But it does correctly render terror, and it somewhat correctly presents that the cause of Allah is to terrorize his enemies. Well, this is the message of the Quran. It is the result of the pledge of Aqaba. It is a declaration of war against all mankind. It is endorsed by, demanded by Allah, the wannabe God of Islam. Well, since the Quran is the constitution of Islam, there is no possibility that the religion is going to be moderated or reformed. Nothing has or will change. And as I said in part B of the 16th episode of Muhammad's Criminal Enterprise, because the 8th surah is among those revealed late in the chronological order of the Quran. It was revealed, obviously, in Yathrib, today's Medina. And it follows the 2nd surah. And in 2:106, Allah says that if we change our mind and we come up with something better, then we abrogate what we have said previously. We throw it into oblivion. And what we say now is all that counts. So there's so many contradictions in the Quran has to have a verse to deal with contradictions. But what that verse says is if something came before it that says one thing and then something that came after says another, it's the one that comes after that counts. So if any one of the 80-some Quran surahs that were revealed in Kaabaville, actually Petra, although they claim Mecca, was peaceful, it wouldn't matter. because it would be annulled by these, which are declarations of war. All of the Yathrib surahs, those revealed in what is now called Medina, were revealed in the last 10 years of the Islamic era, and they're all a call to terror and to war, to kill. And so it doesn't matter if you can even find a peaceful verse early in the Quran in terms of not the numerical order, but the chronological order, because it was annulled by these. Further, this notion that terror and killing is a function of radical Islam is nonsense. It is the Islam of the Quran. No Islamic terrorist group has corrupted their religion. It is their religion that has corrupted them. All good Muslims are terrorists. The Quran just said so. Islam was conceived to enslave and annihilate humankind. Muslims will continue to arm themselves and justify jihad until there is no one left to plunder or kill. Should you be the last victim, please be responsible and turn out the lights on the human experience. Muhammad survived mankind has survived the beasts of Rome and Roman Catholicism, even the Third Reich. But for most, that will not be the case with Islam. While not capable of destroying the world on its own, there are so many alliances tied to the extraction, purchase, and transportation of oil. Non-Muslim nations will oppose one another, and they will even work with or oppose China and Russia, being on one side or another with Europe and America on the divvying up of oil in the Islamic Middle East. And because of that, governments are afraid to tell the truth about Islam for fear of offending the source of energy that they are enriching and therefore funding their own funeral. And so we are in a death spiral where either someone other than just myself starts to speak out credibly, knowingly, boldly, rationally, intelligently against this religion, sharing the Quran and Hadith, telling the truth about Allah and Muhammad, the fact that this is a war manifesto, that it is a declaration of war against all humankind, then there really is no hope for life on the planet. If you are unaware of what came before, you might be suckered in by the 61st verse. It reads, Quran 8:61. And if they incline to peace, then you incline to it. But put trust in Allah. Indeed, He, all hearer, all knower. Quran 8:62. But if they intend to deceive you, then surely Allahu is sufficient for you. He, the one who supported you with His help and with the believers by giving you followers. Imagine that. Allah, as Satan, is telling those he has deceived that the people he hasn't managed to bewilder are those who, he intends to beguile. But more than this, how can Muslims incline to peace prior to eliminating non-Muslims? We're just told that disbelievers will never be allowed to prevail and that they must be taught a horrific lesson through blunt trauma. According to the Quran, Muslims are of like mind, feeling, and intent. Therefore, someone who advocates peace, according to the Quran, cannot be a Muslim. Quran 8:63. And as for the believers, He has attuned their hearts, uniting them. You had spent whatever is in all of the earth. You could not have attuned, united, or bound their hearts, but Allah has united and bound them. Indeed, He, Almighty, All-Wise. Quran 864, O prophet, sufficient for you, Allahu, and whoever follows you of the believers. Now I'm going to read this as it was actually written without all of the parenthetical additions to make Allah appear literate. And he has attuned their hearts, uniting them. If you spent whatever in all the earth, you not attuned, united, or bound their hearts, but Allah united and bound them. Indeed, he, Almighty, all-wise, O prophet, sufficient for you, Allahu, and whoever follows you of the believers. How does one follow Muhammad? They do as Muhammad did. What did Muhammad do? He went out and attacked his own brethren, the very custodians of the Kaaba. He told his goons to kill them and abduct them for ransom. And this was just the beginning. And what has Allah said thus far? That you must fight and kill the non-Muslims until the only religion is Islam, and you must muster whatever weapons you can against them so that you can threaten and terrorize them. And whatever you spend pursuing the cause of Allah will be refunded to you, including your own life. The first to interpret this surah said, Ishaq 3:26, if they ask you for peace on the basis of Islam, submission, make peace on that basis, but be of one mind by his religion. So the only way that you can stop the onslaught of the Islamic war machine is to submit to Islam. While the previous two verses are virtually incomprehensible, especially in the midst of this killing spree, they provide a particularly odd segue into one of Allah's most ominous lines. Quran 8:65. O prophet. Now, by the way, the Quran itself will contradict itself and say that Muhammad was not a prophet. And it's obvious that Muhammad was not a prophet, even though the Quran here is saying, O prophet, because of the fact that there was not a single prophecy issued by either Allah or Muhammad that came true. Not one. If there ever was an example of a false prophet, it's these two, Allah and Muhammad. They proved that they should not be trusted. When Muslims say the Prophet Muhammad, they either don't know what the term prophet means or they're unaware that Muhammad never issued a single prophecy. The reason they use the title is because the title was used by the rabbis in Yathrib. And Muhammad assumed that since Israelites were prophets when speaking for Yahweh, that, well, their guy speaking for Allah ought to be a prophet too. But guess what? It comes with a test and a set of criterion. In Dabarim 18, the only chapter that Muslims like to mine to claim that's their guy when it says specifically that he isn't their guy, there is a test as to who qualifies for a prophet. There are 6 points in it. Muhammad failed every one of them. So, non-prophet, inspire and motivate, urging the believers to al-qital, the fight. And then in parenthetical and the translation, conquering fear or of death. If, they forgot there, are 20 steadfast among you, they will overcome 200. And if are 100, they will overcome 1,000 of those who disbelieve, because they, the disbelievers, are a people without intelligence, comprehension, or understanding. So, O prophet, of which that is a lie, inspire and motivate, urging the believers to fight. To fight. No other word to translate al-qital. It is fight. If there are 20 steadfast among you, they will overcome 200. 10 to 1. If you are 100, they will overcome 1,000. 10 to 1. They are a people without intelligence, comprehension, or Islam or understanding. That being true, why is the average IQ of the Muslim 30 points below, almost 35 below the average IQ of a Jew? Their primary enemy now. The average Jewish IQ is 115. The average Muslim IQ is 70. That's what, 45 points difference. Fact is, you have to be completely stupid, barring on illiterate, to believe this nonsense in the Quran. It's easily the worst book ever written. It is inaccurate historically, inaccurate scientifically, foolishly repetitive. Some themes are repeated 500 times. It is grossly immoral. The vast preponderance of it is plagiarized either from the Hanifs in Yemen, who were Arab converts to Judaism, or twisted Talmud stories from the rabbis of Yathrib. And all of the pilfered material was twisted to serve Mohammed's interests as situational scriptures. It is literally the dumbest, worst, most immoral, most unjustified book ever written. And Allah wants to pretend that those who don't accept it are the ones who are stupid, as opposed to the ones who do. Well, this is the math of terror. On September 11th, 19 good Muslims followed Allah's instructions, and they murdered 3,000 innocent men, women, and children, fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. They snuffed out their lives because Americans were a people devoid of understanding, well, specifically to Islam. And since that time, it has only gotten worse. On October 7th, fewer than 3,000, and now they're saying, well, maybe it was 4, 5, or 6,000 crazed and cruel Islamic terrorists, the majority of whom were not members of Hamas, just good Muslims, invaded Israel. And yet they brought a population of 9.4 million, 7.2 million of them Jews, to their knees. And based upon the way the world is responding to Israel's defense, the country is now fighting for its very survival. In today's anti-Semitic climate, worse than at any time in human history, the proliferation of Muslims in league with their progressive pimps is calling for the utter destruction of Israel and the annihilation of the Jewish race. The Sirah proclaims, Ishaq 3:26, O prophet, exhort the unbelievers to fight. If there are 20 good fighters, they will defeat 200, for they are a senseless people and do not fight. They do not fight with good intentions for the truth. They were off on a terrorist raid to steal the property of others and their own family. That's the truth. Who could have imagined that someone referring to themselves as a prophet, someone claiming to speak for a God, could have been a proponent of unrelenting war? Or that anyone would believe that fighting to defend oneself from attack while being murdered was somehow inappropriate. But murdering for money, well, that was virtuous. But that is Islam, where right is wrong, where bad is good, Satan is God, but Yahweh is not. The plagiarized accounts in the Quran are true, while the originals in the Torah are somehow corrupt, even though it preceded Islam by 2,000 years. Clearly, Allah's venom is a neurotoxin, rendering Muslims mentally and morally incapacitated. And that's a real problem because evidence and reason don't prevail. Now, I suppose the Quran is a bit like moonshine. Consuming too much of it, moonshine literally, debilitates the ability to exercise good judgment, abrogates moral constraints, slurs speech, and can be blinding. And many become angry drunks who lash out violently at the world around them. Moonshine, indeed. Fortunately, apart from the two aforementioned attacks, Allahu's claims regarding the zombie army of the apocalypse have proven unreliable. And outright battles between Muslims and non-Muslims, the ratios are inverted. Rather than 20 overcoming 200, more typically 100 Muslims fall for every one non-Muslim combatant. As evidence, consider Israel's War of Independence, the Six-Day War, and the Yom Kippurim War against Muslims, who outnumbered them 100 to 1 and lost all three times. So, why haven't Muslims held up their Quran and held their wannabe God's feet to the fire? He has disqualified himself as someone who can be trusted. The opposite of what he claimed is true. But alas, Satan has a cure for that too. He told the senseless that it was the unbelievers who were mentally impaired. After all, they didn't swoon at his serotons or wax poetic over slaughtering balding merchants. Soon, by the way, you're going to have the opportunity to hear my response to the Serotan challenge, where Allah claims no one can best him at Serotans. But I did. And my challenge has turned into a nifty song, and it has been produced. We're just adding the video elements to it so that there can be some dancing skeletons to bring this melody to life and light for you. Well, evidently, suffering from a quasi-lucid moment and recognizing that he had been all spit and no substance up to this moment, Allahu downgraded his estimate from 10 to 1 to 2 to 1, all by besmirching his slaves. You see, what actually happened is Muhammad recited this as if it were coming from Allah. Of course, he was making it up as he went along. And the Muslims said, wait a minute. There's no way we're going to be able to prevail at 10 to 1. This is ludicrous. So Muhammad got cold feet and says, well, Allah, how about we come up with a more moderate version of this? And he abrogated a Quran statement, one from the next. Quran 8:66. Now Allahu has lightened your task, for he knows that there is a weakness in you. And if so, there are among you 100 steadfast persons, they shall overcome and vanquish, that would be kill, 200. And if there are 1,000 of you, they shall overcome 2,000 with the permission of Allah. Allahu is with the steadfast and persistent. Why make the first statement only to annul it in the next? There is, well, you want to know what the answer? Here's the answer. Why I made the statement that I did. Ibn Ishaq, which is the first to collect the hadith, which are the words of Muhammad and those who were his henchmen, reads on page 326 of the Alfred Goulim translation produced for the University of Oxford. Abdullah told me that when the verse came down, it was a shock to the Muslims, who took it hard. They were afraid, as the odds were just too great. So Allah relieved them, and he canceled the verse with another. Now Allah has relieved you, and he knows that there is a weakness among you. So if there are 100, they shall vanquish 200. Well, this is insightful for two reasons. It demonstrates that Muhammad was making much of this up as he went along, and then he adjusted and abrogated his recitals based upon the reaction of the first Muslims. It also speaks to the degeneration of Muslim character. The first and best Muslims were not shocked are even significantly troubled about the prospects of fighting and killing all non-Muslims everywhere without limitation, imposing Islam by force worldwide, or being so cruel that no one would dare challenge them. That didn't bother them. They didn't like the prospect of being wildly successful. And so they were called weak and downgraded something more like, well, their God, never to be troubled by success again. In the annals of human history, Allah's next line may be the most contrary to human decency. Well, that's quite a statement. First, simply and accurately stated, then presented with the benefit of the underlying Arabic terminology. Here it is in the Islamic God's message of doom. Quran 8:67. Is not for a prophet that should be for him nocturnal travelers until he has made a great slaughter in the land. You want and desire the world's wants and desires, but Allahu wants and desires the last. Allahu, strong, wise, well, and mostly illiterate. Inclusive of the Arabic words and replete with the actual and extrapolated meanings, this appalling verse reads, Quran 8:67. It is not for a Nabi, prophet. That's a Hebrew word, by the way, stolen and incorporated into the Quran. I told you they stole that term from the rabbis. Nabi is Hebrew for prophet. It is not for a Nabi that should be lahu, for him, arsa, captives, literally, however, nocturnal travelers, until youth he makes a great slaughter in the land. Turiduna, you desire al-dunya, the world's arada, commodities, literally wants and desires. But Allahu, your idu, wants and desires al-akhirata, the hereafter, literally the last or the end. And Allahu azunun, almighty, literally strong, hakimun, wise. All of these words, by the way, are bastardized from the Hebrew. May the Islam as a religion of peace propagandists choke on this little ditty from the vicious snake who seeks to be their God. Before we contemplate how another 20 Arabic scholars rendered this caustic diatribe, I want you to understand that it was written, or more correctly, recited, as follows. The Ara of Quran 8:67 was composed of 2 sentences and a braggadocious fragment. And while Allahu habitually surmises his diabolical rants by telling Muslims that he is mighty and wise, when all evidence is to the contrary, the good ungod seldom, the ungod seldom speaks in grammatically correct and complete sentences, making these statements uniquely important. The opening verbal phrase, ma kana, it is not, is simple, straightforward, and unambiguous. And yet, in a score of translations that follow, you will see that it is augmented by behoove twice, behooveth, any, fit, fitting, had not been, proper, in no way, befitting twice, beyond the dignity, apostle should, it was not to, and it does not benefit. All of those as a rendering of what is correctly translated from Mahkana, it is not. Since there is no support in the Quranic text for these additions, they are presenting the words of men who have surmised that their God was an inadequate communicator. Well, Nabi prophet is from the Hebrew word Nabi, conveying the same meaning. This is concerning for many reasons. First, since there isn't a single fulfilled prophecy in the Quran or the Islamic Hadith, Muhammad could not have been a Nabi. Therefore, Allah is either ignorant or deliberately misleading Muslims about the single most essential aspect of their religion. Since Muhammad was not a prophet, neither the Quran nor Islam can be true. Second, by using the Arabic derivation of the Hebrew Nabi, Muhammad set himself up to be judged by the Torah's Dabarim 18 test for a Nabi, which this false Nabi failed in every possible way. And since nothing could be more pertinent to this evaluation than Yahweh's assessment, I'll share what Moshe revealed at the conclusion of this analysis. Third, by misappropriating the Torah's nomenclature, Allahu is trying to fool Muslims into believing that his Nabi is the equivalent of Moshe, the greatest of them. This somehow entitles him to misappropriate and misconstrue the Torah to create the false impression that he is God. Yet, all Muhammad had in common with the great liberator Moshe, well, is the letter Mem. He was otherwise worth less than the sheep's poop beneath Moshe's feet. Fourth, since the faithful have been beguiled into believing that all manner of prophets are responsible for their religious text, a prophet, even a self-proclaimed and false one, is afforded a superlative status. Such is the case here because Muslims and non-Muslims incorrectly refer to the worst man who ever lived as an utter nincompoop and a psychopath as the Prophet Muhammad. The inference is that a mass murdering terrorist, a cruel pedophile, a serial rapist should be respected because he allegedly spoke for some sort of God. And yet, in Muhammad's case, nothing could be further from the truth. Fifth, by using Nabi, prophet, in this case, the inference is that abducting people, either for ransom or to enslave them, is religiously ordained and not politically or criminally motivated. And that is exceedingly important because this distinction is where the world loses its mind. If Hitler had written this in Mein Kampf as the leader of his political movement, it would have been immediately and resolutely rebuked. But because this was recited within a supposed religious text about a Nabi prophet, rather than a political tome by Der Fuhrer, the leader, somehow more gruesome than anything Adolf Hitler would have to say, is, well, universally ignored. And this is a very serious problem because that will soon haunt all mankind. Ignorant is not bliss. The fact that Hitler did not refer to himself as a prophet, even though Mein Kampf is a religious text, and the fact that the Quran refers to Muhammad falsely as a prophet, it is perceived that Islam is a religious text where Mein Kampf is not, and yet the books, apart from some of the terminology, semantics really, are identical. In the 70 generations of men and women who have come and gone since these reprehensible words were spoken by this non-prophet, less than 70 people have had the character and courage to hang Muhammad and Allah on their own terminology. That speaks poorly of our collective morality and intelligence, and it is particularly devastating considering the growing influence and vile attitude of progressives in academia, politics, and the mainstream media, social media, and these influencers who openly support the Islamic agenda as Muslim pimps. Muslims did what Quran 867 conveys during their October 7th massacre of Jews. And yet, rather than holding the religion of Islam, the Quran, the wannabe prophet, Muhammad, the wannabe God Allah accountable, Muslims and progressives blamed what occurred on their victims. It was and remains the greatest worldwide expression of stupidity in the history of the planet. And we are just beginning to feel the consequences. Life on Earth will become hellish over the next decade. As a result, it is Islam that is responsible for what will be World War III. Well, the next phrase reads, "And yakuna lahu," that should be for him. This is also relevant for a number of reasons. First, whether Muhammad or Allah, the non-prophet or ungod, shared the same nomenclature and purpose. It was all lahu for him. The Quran, the war against all mankind, slaughtering and stealing, the religion of Islam, wasn't for anyone other than lahu, for him. The only difference between the false prophet and false god was that one was named Mohammed and the other referred to himself by the title Allahu, the for him. By comparison, the name Allah does not appear anywhere in the Quran. It isn't even in the terrorist prayer of fear, Allahu Akbar. Allahu is greater. Second, this means that taking captives, either by enslaving or kidnapping them for ransom, was for Muhammad's and Allahu's benefit. It was not for the betterment of Muslims or the benefit of mankind. As it turns out, they had a shared agenda in this regard. Muhammad wanted to slaughter his extended family for renouncing the absurdity of his claims on their religion. And he needed to silence the Jews for outing him over the purchasing and then bastardization of his recitals. Then, by capturing those he didn't kill and holding them for hostage and ransom, he could lord over them, which gave him a sense of superiority that he craved, and it also enriched him. And he craved money, as this affirms, and he could use that money to buy more weapons and to be a more effective sand pirate. As for Allahu, he has had two objectives regarding the annoyance of humankind since the beginning. Humanity was to be enslaved as Muslims or slaughtered as non-Muslims. It was only by eliminating humankind that Satan could prevail and remain out of Sheol, hell. If a remnant of Yehudim and Israelites were awakened to the truth about Yahweh and Dod prior to Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliations in year 6000 Yah, 2033, then the return is promised for their people can not be avoided. As a result, Satan will be dispatched to hell. The adversary's only hope was to control or kill everyone on earth such that there would be no one left to celebrate the intended family reunion, thereby keeping God away. This is why I include Yahweh's instructions to his people. His testimony is the antidote for Islam's toxicity, and I have woven it all the way through all 5 volumes of goddamn religion. The contrast is astonishing. Third, Muhammad's dead. Therefore, there is no longer a purpose to this, even though it is a fanatical diatribe. Let it go, Muslims. It wasn't for you. It was for Allahu, for him. And fourth, as you will witness momentarily, the phrase an yakuna lahu, that it should be for him, when untranslated, and all but one was the Muhammad Ahmed and Shurma of the 20 esteemed renditions of this recital that I'm going to cite for you. If this is supposed to be the perfect word of the Islamic deity, that's very hard to explain. The next word in the surviving text of the Quran is asra. And while translated as captives or prisoners, it actually means a nocturnal journey when traveling under the darkness of night. It shares a common root with Isra, the night's journey, which is among the most embarrassing moments in Islam, when a flying donk mule trampled the religion, carrying a genuine ass aboard. Arsa is the feminine name, as a feminine name, speaks of captivating and traveler. Put them together and you have captivating those who travel, which is extrapolated to kidnapping caravanners. Arsa is also a variant of the name Ashra or Ashra, which means to pledge, as in the Ashra, to pledge war against all humanity in the Ashra of Aqaba. It is also the name of a river in the Garden of Bliss. Now, should the definitions of Ashra in the interlinears I surveyed be wrong, and should the intended word have been asir, it means imprisoned. However, a better choice in this context would have been sabi, from the Hebrew sabah, which addresses taking a captive. But alas, the text reads asar, nocturnal travelers. It is addressing the tendency of caravanners to travel at night to avoid the scorching heat of the desert. And yet not a single Islamic translator or Arabic scholar thought it useful to convey an accurate rendering of the Quranic text. There are a number of ways to correctly render the intent of Yukak, all of which are horrific. These include, he has made a great slaughter, he has battled strenuously, he has thoroughly subdued, he gives a sound thrashing, he has subjugated, he has subdued the enemy by shedding blood, he has thoroughly crushed, he inflicts a massacre, he has battled and subdued, he has let much blood, he has thoroughly decimated, he has immensely and profusely shed their blood, he hardens and exceeds in killing, and tyrannizes, or he is triumphed after a regular bloody fighting. Therefore, I have no issue with the translations of Yuk. My conclusion here and my concern with Muslims doing it today to Jews as a result of the Quran. Fayard Ardi means in the land, although since it is a derivation of the Hebrew Adamah, it would be more correctly rendered as dirt, sand, soil, or ground. Allahu prefers his corruption of Adamah because Adam was comprised of it, and he sees it as demeaning. He doesn't much like the more accurate Hebrew word eretz because it speaks of the promised land of Israel. The scholars who rendered al-Ardi as anything more than land in the sense of dirt, were deliberately misleading Muslims into believing that this slaughter or massacre had to go on beyond the bloodied sands of the pits of Badar. This brutality and covetousness was lahu for him, and it did not extend to you. Muslims must misread the Quran, 867, to justify their invasions of Israel to mutilate, murder, and abduct Jews. But since Muslim scholars and imams encourage the practice by misrepresenting the Quranic text to make Allah appear sane and mass murder appear good, there is plenty of blame to toss around. Moving to the second sentence, Turiduna means you desire or you want. And while that's clear enough, arada, rendered as commodities, also means to want or desire. Therefore, it is you want what you want, followed by I want what I want. The most commonly used verb for this is covet, as in this case, it is the worst kind of coveting because it is directed at things that are stolen as a result of abducting and slaughtering people. One of the greatest miracles of the Quran is that Muslims believe that an avowed terrorist, a savage mass murderer, a human trafficker, a slaver, a kidnapper, and cruel pedophile, as well as a rapist and admitted liar and thief who was admittedly demon-possessed and suicidal, an egotistical psychopath, while also illiterate and inarticulate, ignorant and irrational, was the best of men chosen by their God for his superlative character. And yet, Quran 867 proclaims just the opposite. If it was true, then Muhammad was among the worst men in history. And if false, well, the Quran is a lie. Both turn out to be true. Among the informed and rational, there is no way for Islam to survive Quran 867. And it only gets worse. Before we consider why this is so, I'd like to define another word in the text, al-akhirah, which is routinely rendered hereafter. It is derived from the Hebrew adjective akar, meaning afterwards or besides. The many variations of akar are often translated as other or different, the hindermost, last, or end. It is the final outcome for a remnant. This is important because Muslims have been led to believe that al-akhirah speaks of the afterlife and either the Garden of Bliss or Islamic hell. It is routinely compared to al-dunya, the world, as it is in the here and now, to suggest that our lives are so worthless and meaningless that nothing in al-dunya has any merit compared to al-akhirah, the hereafter. Now, the reason Satan wants to degrade the human experience and to negate the value of the lives we are living is because humans are pawns, slaves actually, to manipulate so that humanity capitulate and kills for the promise of a far more disgusting life in al-akhirah. Now, I'm quite certain that I am the first to recognize that al-akhirah, the end, is all that matters to the adversary. To stay out of Sheol, hell, and to remain the Lord of the earth as a false god, Satan, in the guise of Allah, must play al-akhirah for all it's worth. He needs to predestine a different outcome in the end for a remnant where there is an alternative besides the one Allah or Yahweh intends on Shabuah, Towrah, and Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations. All of the fuss over the hereafter, which is to coincide with Allah's day of doom, resurrection day, judgment day, the hour, points to the purpose that the Quran was recited. Allah needs an alternative reality. Between the time he recited these cruel and immoral words to his non-prophet 1400 years ago until the fulfillment of Yom Kippurim, 6:22 p.m. sunset in Jerusalem on the first day of the week, October 2nd, 2033, year 6000 Yah, Allah must degrade the human experience to the extent Yahweh gives up on humankind and decides not to return to reconcile his relationship with a remnant of Yisrael and Yehudim. Lacking the ability to woo anyone with his banter, the snake has chosen a three-pronged approach: beguile and mislead as many people as possible, then enslave Muslims to control and kill the rest, starting with the Jews. Should he prevail, should the Abrahamic religion succeed, there would be no one gathered in Jerusalem anticipating Yahweh's return with Dode. And without a family, God's purpose would be thwarted, and he would remain in heaven, leaving the planet to the adversary. Therefore, he said, Turiduna, you desire al-dunya, the world's, arada, desires, but Allahu yaridu wants and desires al-akhirah, the hereafter, a different result in the end. So there it is, folks. As you pursue the following score of translations that I'm going to share with you, you will see that all of the added words, which I'll give air quotes around, suggest that the Islamic God wanted the benefits of the hereafter for Muhammad. But that's not how the text actually reads. This was a comparison. Muhammad was greedy for the desires of this world, while Allahu desired an akhirah, a different outcome in the end. for the remnant of God's people. So, spoiler alert, Allah who fails and God prevails. I am anticipating many thousands of Goyim, Yisraelites, and Yehudim to join me during the Shabuah harvest in advance of the time of Israel's troubles in May 2026. And while Towrah, this gleaning on the first day of the 7th month, will be less robust at sunset on September 23rd, 2033, the sacrifice of the red heifer following the sunrise on the Shabat, 24th of September, will prepare the remnant of Israel that has been left behind to welcome Yahweh on his return. This will mark the 32nd anniversary of Towrah in 2001, a September 18th of that year, when Yahweh asked me to serve his people in this way. Then, 3 years and 6 months later, as a result of my return on Passover in 2030 with Elia, we will be expecting 70,000 Yehudim and Israelites to be gathered in Jerusalem in anticipation of Yahweh's return with his son and our Messiah, Dod, on Yom Kippurim. 5 days later, we will be observing the 10-year anniversary of October 7th, 2023, on October 7th, 2033, with the first day of a 1,000-year celebration of Sukkah, camping out with Yahweh our Father thereafter. Well, that is good news. Yahweh's invitation is only for a select few. It pertains only to those who have walked away from religion and politics, distancing themselves from the Haredi and progressives in particular. The invitees will have come to know Yahweh by name while attending his mikveh, accepting the conditions of his bereth. Now, recognizing that this is what the Quran 8:67 says, it is not for a prophet that should be for him nocturnal travelers until he has made a great slaughter in the land. You want and desire the world's wants and desires, but Allahu wants and desires the last, and Allahu strong, wise. These other translations read as follows. Pictel. It is not for any prophet to have captives until he hath made slaughter in the land. Ye desire the lure of this world, but Allah desireth for you the hereafter. The for you was added. Allah desireth the hereafter, and Allah is mighty and wise. Yes, Allah does want a different end game. The clear Quran. It is not fit for a prophet that he should take captives until he has thoroughly subdued the land. You believers settled with the fleeting gains of this world, while Allah's aim is the hereafter. Allah is almighty, all wise. Mohammad Assad. It does not, all in caps, sounds like Trump. Behoove, and it writes SI6. What I'm saying here, it's written grammatically incorrectly. A prophet to keep captives unless he has battled strenuously on earth. You may desire the fleeting gains of this world, but God desires the life to come. And God is almighty, wise. Yes, it is Allah that wants the life that he has imagined for himself in the end. This is not for Muslims. Dr. Leah Bakhirtar. It had not been for a prophet that he should have prisoners of war unless he gives a sound thrashing in the region. You want the advantage of the present, but God wants the world to come. And God is almighty, wise. T.B. Irving. It is not profit for a prophet to have any prisoners until he has subdued everyone on earth. You all want worldly show, while God wants the hereafter. God is powerful, wise. Dr. Kamal Omar. It is not for a prophet, and in parentheses, i.e., it suits him not, or it is not expected of him, that the infidels may become under him prisoners as an outcome of the treacherous catch or a silent kidnapping, unless and until the Muslim force engages itself in open and declared war on earth. You desire the benefit of this world, and Allah desires for you the hereafter also. And Allah is Almighty, All-Wise. I'm not sure if that had more parenthetical contributions from the translator or if more of the words were from Allahu Ha-He. Muhammad Mahmud Ghali opined, in no way can any prophet have captives until he has slaughtered the enemy in the earth. You, i.e. the believers, are willing to have the chance advantages of the present life, literally the lowly life, i.e. the life of this world, and Allah wills the hereafter, and Allah is ever mighty, ever wise. Muhammad Taqi Usmani wrote, it is not befitting a prophet that he has captives with him unless he has subdued the enemy by shedding blood in the land. You intend to have the stuff of this world, while Allah intends the hereafter. Allah is mighty, wise. Shabir Ahmed, it is beyond the dignity of a prophet that he may hold any captives except temporarily during warfare. They must be freed at the conclusion of the hostilities by way of kindness for ransom or by exchange or prisoners of war, and there is no other option to keep them. You may desire the fleeting gains of this world, but Allah desires for you the good of the eternal achievement, the life to come. Allah is mighty, wise. That is so far from the written text. Shabir Ahmed just acknowledged that you cannot take the text of the Quran on its own merit, and it requires massive human interference to create a sane perception. Dr. Munir Munshe, it is not befitting for the prophet to take prisoners during the battle until he had thoroughly crushed the enemy in the land. You may desire the lure of the world while Allah intends to give you the eternal life to come. Allah is the most powerful, the wisest. Muhammad's Shia International. It is not for a prophet to have captives of war until he inflicts a massacre upon Allah's enemies in the land. Some Muslims desire the commodities of this world, but Allah desires, again, they add for you, even though that's not what the text says, the hereafter. Allah is exalted, mighty, and Gagme, wise. Abdul Majed Dar Yabadi. It behooveth not a prophet that he should have captives until he hath greatly slaughtered in the land. I guess if you say behooveth, then a great slaughter sounds more religious. Ye seek the gear of the world, while Allah seeketh the hereafter, and Allah mighty wise. Ahmed Ali. This is a paraphrase that suits a lot of the progressives who will pimp on behalf of these Islamic murderers. Ahmed Ali. No apostle should take, it didn't say apostle, did it? No apostle should take captives until he has battled and subdued the country, not people, the country. You desire the vanities of this world. Didn't say vanities, but God wills, didn't say God either. And then they put in, for you the reward, because it doesn't say that either, of the world to come. And doesn't say that, by the way, either. And God doesn't say that, almighty and all-wise. Aisha Brule. It is not fitting for a prophet to take captives until he has let much blood in the land. You desire the goods of the world, whereas Allah desires the next world. Allah is almighty, all wise. Ali Kuli Kara'i. A prophet may not take captives until he is thoroughly decimated in the land. You desire the transitory gains of this world, while Allah desires for you the reward of the hereafter, and Allah is mighty wise. Ahmed Razi Khan, it is not befitting for any prophet that he should make captives to infidels unless and until he has immensely shed their blood in the land. You desire the goods of the world, and Allah desires the hereafter, and Allah is dominant, wise, in copiously and immensely shedding their blood. Muhammad Ahmad and Samira, it was not to a prophet that there should be for him captives / prisoners, so that he has hardens and / excels in killings. You can't be a prophet with the captives until you're a really good killer in the earth, planet Earth. You want the present world's enjoyable accessories / vanities, and God wants the end, other life. And God is glorious / mighty, wise / judicious. Faruqi Hogg, it does not benefit any prophet to capture the disbelievers alive until he has profusely shed their blood in the land. You people desire the wealth of this world, and Allah wills the hereafter, and Allah almighty wise. Amatul Rahman Omar, named after Islam's first god. It does not behoove a prophet to take captives unless he has triumphed after a regular bloody fighting in the land. Parentheses. If you take captives without warfare, into parentheses, you desire the temporary and frail goods of this world, while Allah desires for you the good of, in parentheses, the hereafter, and Allah is almighty wise. So if you don't take captives, or if you take captives until you have triumphed in a major bloody fighting in the land, then, well, you are taking prophets without a great slaughter in warfare, and therefore you're desiring the temporary and frail goods of the world when Allah really wants you to do a bloody killing and then take lots of captives. He wants you to do exactly what Muslims did on 10/7 in Israel. The Noble Quran by Mushin Khan and Muhammad al-Hiliyah. It is not for a prophet that he should have prisoners of war and free them with ransom. Doesn't say that. Until he had made a great slaughter, doesn't say among his enemies in the land. You desire the good of this world, i.e. the money and ransom for freeing captives. But Allah desires for you the hereafter, and Allah is mighty wise. What this is saying is, don't take them captive, slaughter them. Allah's not going to be happy unless you kill them. You may want to capture them and get the ransom like the Muslims did on October 7th in Israel. But Allah, nah, it's not that way. He wants you to slaughter them. He wants their blood to flow. That's how you earn the hereafter with Allah. Well, every which way, this is revolting. Even with the crude translations, this served as a dual confession. Muhammad lusted for the ransom captives would bring and the thrill of the slaughter. But Allah was only interested in how it would all turn out in the end, with everyone dead. Sure, Allah was entertained by capturing, enslaving, torturing, and murdering men, but he wanted much more. Should anyone have doubted whether calling Muhammad and Allah psychopaths was warranted, go back to the first page of this chapter as I began to share it with you now 16 programs ago, and ponder the implications of the conversation with the mutilated bodies in the pit. that Muhammad was gloating over, that his gang of ghouls had murdered. This affirms that Muhammad was a vicious and immoral sand pirate. It means that he slaughtered his kin, former neighbors, and extended family members. He didn't just kill merchants, he was merciless. Muhammad was unrestrained while murdering civilians. It also means that he engaged in and profited from human trafficking, kidnapping for ransom, and slavery. He not only did these things for money, not for his religion, but also he did so with his God's approval. Even worse, Allah presents Muhammad as the ideal paradigm, the perfect role model for terrorist Muslims to follow. And now you know the ungod's purpose in the end. On October 7th, 2023, Muslims fulfilled the translated intent of this surah concurrently. As good Muslims followed Muhammad's example and believed in the Quran, they massacred and abducted simultaneously. Multitasking, they also tried to conquer and subdue the land of Israel. It was a Quranic symphony of sour notes, a funeral dirge for the entire human race. To be a good Muslim, massacre with maximum carnage while deploying all available weaponry, kidnap for ransom, or induce into slavery. This is Islam according to Muhammad, Allah, the Sunnah, and the Quran. They concur. There is no dissenting voice in the matters of jihad or mass murder, the very enslavement of humankind. Since we have twice contemplated what Yahweh inspired Moshe to write regarding false prophets in general, and this one in particular, I would like to share the origins of both words used by Allah to imply that he was almighty and all-wise. Azunun, typically rendered as almighty, is from the Hebrew word Oz, and its verbal root azaz. It speaks of physical or material strength and of prevailing through the use of it. It also serves as one of several Hebrew words for goat. In this context, it is paired with Azal to become Azalez, scapegoat. Azaz and Oz were the basis of the goddess of Al-Uzza's name. And when incorporated into Azab, it is to forsake, to abandon, and to damn. And that is why the Hebrew term for Almighty is Al, not Azaz. Clearly, Allahu lacks Azaz, physical strength, but he seems to fit many of the other derivations of Azaz and personifies Azab. Hikam, rendered as wise, is a concept foreign to Islam, Allah, Muhammad, and the Quran. The undeserved accolade was also pilfered from the Hebrew lexicon, where cham'am means wise, but also crafty, cunning, shrewd, subtle, and wily. As a korub, cherub, Satan was many of these things, but as a nakash, rendered as a snake, not so much. Now, returning to the scene of the crime and confessions of guilt after it, every word is so maniacal, perhaps we should buttress the Quranist presentations with another admission of Ishaq's biography of the messenger. Ishaq, page 326. Allah said, "No prophet before Muhammad took booty from his enemy, nor prisoners for ransom." Muhammad said, "I was made victorious with terror. The earth was made a place for me to clean." Ethnic cleansing. I was given the most powerful words. Booty was made lawful for me. I was given the power to intercede. These 5 privileges were afforded to no prophet before me. Egomaniacal, sadistic, a pure psychopath. No prophet before Mohammed took booty from his enemy, nor prisoners for ransom. Mohammed said, I was made victorious with terror. The earth was made as a place for me to cleanse. I was given the most powerful words. Booty was made lawful to me. I was given the power to intercede. These 5 privileges were afforded to no prophet before me. Well, there's no denying that Mohammed was unlike any actual prophet. Too bad he isn't condemned as such. The Sirah continues to interpret the Quran, Ishaq 3:27. Allah said, a prophet must slaughter before collecting captives. A slaughtered enemy is driven from the land. Mohammed, you craved the desires of this world, its goods, and the ransom captives would bring. But Allah desires killing them to manifest the religion. Mohammed, you crave the desires of this world, its goods, and the ransoms captives would bring. But Allah desires killing them to manifest the religion. You're listening, Gronk? The very artificial unintelligence of X. Quran 8:68. Had not an ordainment from Allah preceded, predetermined, indeed, would have touched you for what you took, a great punishment. Had not a ordainment from Allah preceded, predetermined, indeed, you would have touched you for what you took, a great punishment. Allah is lecturing Muhammad. Once upon a time before Islam, slaughtering, pillaging, and enslaving were considered immoral, even reprehensible. But Allah, he fixed all of that. He is so merciful to the most merciless. Quran 8:69. So enjoy. Eat what you took as lawful booty and good plunder. And fear Allah. Lo, verily, Allah, oft forgiving, most merciful. So enjoy and eat what you took as lawful booty, as good plunder. And of course, fear Allah. Yeah. He is forgiving of those who commit great slaughters, terrible abductions, who steal. In other words, the prophet was given a special dispensation. Since he had shown himself worthy and had been willing to slaughter and abduct his kin, the ransom was just his reward. Imagine that. Since you're my boy, revel in the loot, celebrate the butchering of your family, and turn your murderers into martyrs. It'll be fun. We're all learning Islam now. So how are you enjoying Islam thus far, my dear listeners? Is this what you expected? Is there anyone who thought that the Quran could be this bad? And speaking of bad, it literally reads, so eat what you have taken. The only acknowledged booty was people. This, however, was not the first time that Allah, as Satan, has endorsed cannibalism. Human flesh and blood are on the menu during Ezekiel's presentation, feast that Satan intends to celebrate when he arrives in Jerusalem in the years prior to Yahweh's return. In fact, there are so many similarities between these books that Satan inspired. To appreciate them, I would encourage you to read the abominable and venomous volumes of Babel. Now, while we can surmise that Allah promises to be the most merciful to the merciless, this snake is laughing through his fangs and popping out of his scales while calling himself oft forgiving and most merciful. It is ridiculous after expounding upon the virtues of grand larceny, armed robbery, abduction for ransom, human trafficking, and effecting a great slaughter and bloodletting. The Hadith agrees. Ishaq 3:27. Allah made booty lawful and good. He used it to incite Muslims to unity of purpose So enjoy what you have captured. This is how a Muslim envisions the world. Quran 8:70. O Prophet, say to whoever in your hands of al-Asra, the nocturnal travelers, the captives, if Allah who knows in your hearts any good, he will give you better than what has been taken from you, and he will forgive you, and Allah who oft forgiving, most merciful. Quite frankly, you captured them because you wanted to trade them for booty, and you wanted the bucks that booty would provide. But Allah wants to take them from you because he really wants to kill them. And Allah who promises that even though he has taken from you what you captured lawfully according to Islam and you stole according to the edicts of the Quran, don't worry about it. Allah's good for it. It's an IOU. He'll repay you in the hereafter. What is the black swan supposed to do when it finds something good? Is it supposed to roll over, jump for joy? And why do the captives who lost their sons and brothers trying to protect their belongings need forgiveness? They were the victims, not the villains. But that wasn't the purpose of this verse. It was designed to lure additional Quraysh into Muhammad's service. If they joined him, they would be able to steal and kidnap with the God's blessing. Therefore, in Islam, wrong is right, bad is good. The religion inverts reality. With Satan's playing God, stealing is so beneficial, the victim should be appreciative. After all, in Islam, it is those who have been raped, robbed, and abused who need forgiveness. All that is needed to make everything right is for Islam's victims to see the benefit of being attacked by Muslims. After all, Allah does not like the ingrate. Muhammad was not a prophet, but instead a psychopath. And while he failed at being religious, he became an accomplished sand pirate, a mass murderer, a terrorist, a kidnapper, and a slave trader. So he was not a complete failure. He was good at being bad. Based upon the claims made in the Quran, we can say with absolute certainty that Allah, well, he is not God. He isn't even a lucid or sane spirit. This is the most pathetic audition for the role of God ever attempted. In light of the 8th surah, the only way to argue in favor of Islam would be to lie. And I hope the audience, and they have to hope, this deceiver has to hope that the audience is like those I encounter on X, equally ignorant, irrational, and immoral. And while there are billions of Muslims, progressives, and others protesting and clamoring in favor of this death cult, to what end? Other than the cessation of all liberty and life on earth and the ultimate expression of cancel culture. And when everyone becomes a pariah and parasite, well, who is there left to plunder and suck spilled blood? According to, or continuing, I should say, to address the merchants whose associates Muhammad had slaughtered at his God's insistence, who had been robbed of their possessions by these Muslims, and who were now hostages, having been abducted and held for ransom, we read. Quran 8:71. But if they intend to betray you, lo, they have betrayed Allah before. So he gave you power and mastery over them, and Allah who is knower wise. Fortunately, Allah is sufficiently incompetent to be deceived by man. I best him on every day. So we can break the curse. We can free Muslims to think for themselves and free them from this death cult. For until we do, they will continue to pit good Muslims against bad Muslims and all Muslims against Jews. Quran 872. Those who accepted Islam left their homes and fought with their property and lives in Allah's cause, as well as those who gave them asylum, aid, and shelter, and those who harbored them. These are allies of one another. According to Allah, a good Muslim either kills or aids and abets killers. That explains the Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Fatah, the PLO, ISIS, Boko Haram, and Al-Qaeda. The great betrayer does not want to be betrayed by those he betrayed. Those who have been raided and robbed, kidnapped and killed to validate the Islamic religion are demeaned for having soured the harmonious relations between the assailants and their victims. Therefore, you will be plundered and you will like it, or they will kill you. The reason that Allahu has devoted the 8th surah to dehumanizing his prey, such that Muslims can religiously steal and slaughter them, is that they refuse to believe that Satan was God, that a psychopath was a prophet, and that this drivel was divine. All of the fuss and feathers over this issue, lack of faith and capitulation to the devil. That's what all this was about. And that, for what? There will be a grievous punishment, and humanities will burn should he continue to prevail. It's Islam against the world, folks. Quran 872. You notice I'm not skipping anything. I'm giving it to you in its entirety. In fact, in Prophet of Doom, I cover the entire goddamn Quran from first verse to last verse, putting all of them into the context of Muhammad's life. Lo, those who believed and hajar, immigrated, and jihad strove to fight with their property and lives in the cause of Allah, and those who give asylum, shelter, and help, some of them allies of one another. But those who not believe and not hajar, immigrate, not for you from their protection from anything until they immigrate. But if they seek your help in the religion, upon you to help them except against a people with whom you a treaty or alliance, and Allahu, all-seer of what you do. Well, there are 3 criterion Muslims must meet. They must believe lies. They must leave their homes and families, including the Kaaba, and flee to a place not of their own and steal it from Jews. They must be jihadists, fighting and killing, plundering and enslaving at Allah's command. That does not sound like a good idea to me. How about you? The first of these deprives an individual of family and friends. The second will cost that person their soul. And the third comes at the cost of mortal lives. But heck, it's a small sacrifice for the opportunity to have constant sex with boys and girls in paradise. Well, the second half of the first sentence is a bit of an enigma. While Allah may have meant to say that those who provided asylum, shelter, and assistance to the Islamic refugees are counted among them, that is not how it reads, nor is it consistent with what was about to fall the Jews who had done these very things on behalf of the newly minted Muslims, because they would soon die. Moreover, those who did not leave their homes to fight were considered apostates, not helpers. In the second sentence, the intent is to say that if a Muslim remained behind in Kaabaville and did not follow Muhammad across the desert to Yathrib, then it's off to hell with them. Even if they were to seek assistance in the failed religion, now that Muhammad had become a sand pirate and profiteer at the head of his new crime syndicate, all bets were off. But think of this. Rather than the pilgrimage to the Kaaba, which is what the Quraysh, the ones that were killed and abducted, were orchestrating, now it's if you don't leave the Kaaba and come to the realm of the new criminal enterprise and its godfather, well, was off to hell that way. So what is the pilgrimage? It's to Muhammad. All people, places, races, and nations are either Muslim or the enemies of Islam. And while that makes Islam and the Quran incompatible with all else, it is what follows that is so devastating. Quran 873. Those who disbelieve are allies to one another. So if you, Muslims, do not do this, make victorious Allah's religion of Islam, there will be fitna, trials and temptations, turmoil and confusion on the earth, and a great fas'udun, mischief and corruption. That's a declaration of war to the bitter end. By definition, then, all good Muslims are bad people. Islam makes them that way. We have witnessed Islam in action. The ungod and his non-prophet have revealed their true identities, their motivations, and their rage. There is no retreat from the battlefields of Badr. As with the Nazis documenting their barbaric behaviors, Muslims chronicled their deeds. Their doctrine cannot escape the damage that it did to itself in the month of Ramadan, AH2, March 624 CE. The books of Ishaq, Tabari Bukhari, Muslim, and the one of Allahu, the Quran, agree. The verdict is unanimous. Islam is a plague. Its founder was a pirate, not a prophet. We know this because they told us so. The more you come to know about this religion, the more obvious it becomes that the world would be better off without Mohammed, Allah, the Quran, Islam, or Muslims. And while neither God nor I are fans of Judaism, Christianity, progressives, conspiratorialists, right-wingers, politics, or patriotism, they are only ancillary problems relative to Islam. And should you be interested in those rebukes, well, then you can read my Babel series, my Twistianity series, as well as the more uplifting and Introduction to God. Driving this dubious delirium home, Allahu continues to tout Aman, faith, Hajir, migration, and Jihad, fighting as the pillars of Islam. According to the Quran and its God, this is the essence of what defines a Muslim, and it is all for Allah. He would send Muslims throughout the world, poisoned by his faith, destined to fight and kill. Quran 874. And those who Aman believed and Hajar emigrated and Jihad strove hard, fighting in the cause of Allahi, al-Jihad, as well as those who gave them asylum and shelter and asar, aid. These are the true al-mu'minum, believers. For them is forgiveness and a rakun, karim, generous and generous provision and noble reward. Forgiveness is afforded the unforgivable. Rewards are allotted to the reprehensible. These are Satan's scriptures, after all. So in Islam, Aman, Hajar, and Jihad are more valuable than blood. Lo, that is in the book of Allah. Quran 875. And those who Aman believed afterwards, and Hajar immigrated, and Jihad strove hard fighting among you, then those are of you, and those of blood. Some of them are nearer to another. Lo, in the book of Allahi, Allah is all knower of everything. Recognizing that this was recited by the Islamic God to inspire mass murder and establish the religion of Islam, using the weapons of war, how does one interpret Islam as peaceful, claim Allah as a God, categorize the Quran as a holy book, or present jihad as a spiritual struggle? Now I'd like to leave Muhammad's criminal enterprise at Badr by sharing some hadith that exposed the nature of this egotistical monster that Muhammad had become. Bukhari, Volume 1, Book 3, number 65. The Prophet got a silver ring made with Muhammad, Allah's apostle, engraved on it. The ring glittered on his hand. Bukhari, Volume 4, Book 56, number 732. Allah's apostle said, I have 5 names. I am Muhammad and Ahmad, the praised one. I am Al-Mahdi, through whom Allah will eliminate infidelity. I am Al-Hashir, who will be the first to be resurrected. And I am also Al-Aqib, because there will be no prophet after me. Muhammad prevailed in Yathrib because the Arabs were led to believe that he was the Messiah, that the rabbinical Jews were anticipating. It was a title this profiteer was all too willing to accept. Bukhari, Volume 4, Book 55, number 651 and 652. I heard Allah's apostle saying, I am the nearest of all people to Isa, which we're to assume is Jesus. All of the prophets are paternal brothers. Their mothers are different, but their religion is one. There has been no prophet between me and Jesus. It's true in a way. While Jesus never existed, the last of the prophets was Malachi in 447 BCE. The Quran was supposedly Muhammad's miracle. Well, I think not. Bukhari, Volume 6, Book 61, number 504. Allah's apostle said, every prophet was given miracles because of which people believed. But I have been given this divine inspiration which Allah has revealed to me. So I hope my followers will outnumber the followers of the other prophets. But even he had a low regard for his divine inspiration. Bukhari, Volume 1, Book 3, number 68. The prophet preached at suitable times so that we might not get bored. He abstained from pestering us with his sermons and knowledge. That is because Islam was a scam. It was neither enlightenment nor religion. It was lahu for him. Bukhari 9, Book 92, number 384. Allah's apostle said, whoever obeys me will enter paradise, and whoever disobeys me will not enter it. And what did Muhammad order? Well, among other things, kill every Jew. Muhammad and Islam were toxic. This is what happened to those who were exposed. Bukhari, Volume 4, Book 52, number 260. Ali burnt some former Muslims alive, and the news reached Ibn Abbas, who said, had I been in his place, I would not have burnt them. As the apostle said, do not punish with Allah's punishment. No doubt I would have killed them. For the prophet said, if a Muslim discards his Islamic religion, kill him. If a Muslim discards his Islamic religion, kill him. The first Muslims burned people alive. But one of Muhammad's most esteemed followers said, no, I would not have burned them alive because that's Allah's punishment. Allah gets to burn them alive. We just get to send them to Allah so he can be sadistic. Now you know who the enemy is. You know why they kill. And that the civilized world will continue to be terrorized as long as Islam is tolerated. It will continue to destroy men's souls, seducing them to murder and to mayhem. I thank you for listening. I understand this has been horrible. The Quran is the most diabolical book ever written. It's reprehensible from beginning to end. But if the world is going to be saved from it, the world first must come to know it. So I thank you for listening. I am Craig Winn. This has been the final edition of Mohammed's Criminal Enterprise.